To establish an accurate timeline for ancient India, historians navigate a massive gap between what we dig up and what we can actually read. Here on the timeline, the earliest era is prehistory. Writing does not exist yet. Every piece of data we have from this period relies strictly on physical artifacts. On the opposite end, starting roughly around 600 BCE, we have formal history. By this point, texts are fully deciphered, and they cross-reference with the archaeological record. The vast stretch in the middle is proto-history. It encompasses both the Harappan civilization and the Vedic period. Texts from these eras exist, but the script is either entirely undeciphered or the writings lack the hard physical evidence needed to back them up. To pull crucial eras out of the fog, historians cannot rely on a single data point. They must triangulate their findings across 3 entirely different pools of evidence. We structure this methodology using the tripartite matrix. It all branches out from a central node, the total history of ancient India. The largest and most complex pool of raw data comes from indigenous literary sources. The second pool provides an external check, the written observations of foreign travelers, ambassadors, and scholars. The third pool is the physical proof, archaeological evidence you can measure, test, and date. Because physical and foreign evidence is incredibly scarce for the earliest periods, historians start by mapping the massive literary taxonomy. Charting exactly how and when those texts evolved establishes a baseline timeline for the civilization. Diving into the literary sources, the texts divide into secular and religious. Pushing directly into the religious branch reveals 2 distinct worldviews, the Brahmanical tradition and the non-Brahmanical. The absolute bedrock of the Brahmanical tradition is a collection of 4 texts known as the Vedas or Samhitas. The most important of these is the Rig Veda. It was not written in a single sitting. It is composed of 10 books, called mandalas, stacked over centuries in a process of chronological stratigraphy. Mandalas 2 through 7 form the oldest layer. These functioned as ancient family books, composed by specific priestly lineages and passed down orally. The 1st and 10th mandalas are much later additions. Crucially, it is in the 10th mandala, specifically in a hymn called the Purusha Sukta, that we find the earliest structural outlines for a rigid social hierarchy. Rounding out the core texts, the Samaveda converted original hymns into musical chants, and the Yajurveda provided the precise formulas required for performing rituals. The final text, the Atharva Veda, focuses on spells, magic, and early medicine. Because it dealt with everyday, practical concerns rather than high ritual, it was originally kept outside the traditional 3 Veda core. The Vedas provide a massive dataset of early deities, geography, and culture. However, as religious hymns, they lack the concrete socio-political context required to function as pure history. Over centuries, the archaic Sanskrit of those original hymns became dense and difficult for subsequent generations to interpret. They required explanatory manuals. This necessity produced the Brahmanas. These were extensive prose commentaries detailing exactly how to perform Vedic rituals, with the Shatapatha Brahmana serving as an exhaustive reference for these procedures. Eventually, a cultural shift pulled thinkers out of the settlements and into the wilderness to contemplate the mysticism behind the rituals. This generated the Aranyakas, or forest texts. This ideological evolution culminated in a final collection of 108 texts known as the Upanishads. The Upanishads moved beyond the mechanics of sacrifice to prioritize pure philosophy, exploring the relationship between the individual soul, Atman, and the universal reality, Brahman. Certain lines from these texts still dictate modern identity. The Mundaka Upanishad is the exact source of India's national motto, Satyameva Jayate, truth alone triumphs. This progression from the Vedas down through the Upanishads provides a chronological record of the ancient Indian mind as it evolved over centuries. To accurately read and apply those ancient texts, scholars developed 6 auxiliary disciplines known as the Vedangas, covering subjects like grammar and astronomy. This era also produced the Sutras and the Smritis, legal and social rulebooks codifying human duties, with the Manusmriti serving as the primary example of societal regulation. Later texts include the 18 Puranas, which compiled ancient lore, mythology, and extensive genealogies. For historians, the Matsya, Vishnu, and Vayu Puranas are highly critical. They contain specific lineages and king lists for the Satavahana, Mauryan, and Gupta dynasties. The Puranas are the closest the Brahmanical tradition gets to providing raw political timelines. But because the narratives are heavily mythologized, they require strict external verification. You cannot write accurate history from a single perspective. To cross-reference the data, historians look entirely outside the Brahmanical worldview. This brings us to the non-Brahmanical, or Shramanic texts, starting with the Buddhist Tripitaka, written in the Pali language. Within the Tripitaka, the section called the Sutta Pitaka further subdivides into 5 distinct collections, or Nikayas. One of these, the Anguttara Nikaya, holds specific historical weight. It provides the definitive list of the 16 Mahajanapadas, the great republics that dominated the 6th century BCE. Alongside these are the Jataka tales, 549 stories regarding the past lives of the Buddha. Their historical value lies in their unintentional but vivid records of pre-Buddhist socio-economic life and foreign trade routes. This Buddhist dataset is further corroborated by the 12 Jain Agamas, providing another independent point of view. This Shramanic literature acts as a corrective lens. It takes the lofty, ritualistic concepts of the Brahmanical texts and grounds them in the concrete political and economic reality of 600 BCE. Despite mapping this entire literary DNA, text alone remains vulnerable to bias and forgery. To establish undeniable fact, we return to our original matrix. True historical fact is only established when the literary tree intersects directly with an observation from a foreign traveler, like the Greek ambassador Megasthenes, and is backed by physical archaeology. We can read about great cities in the texts, but their existence is only proven by excavating ancient urban centers and finding the physical brick and mortar. We cross-reference constantly. The Bogaskoi inscription, found in Central Asia and dating to 1400 BCE, provides physical, carved proof of Vedic deities existing outside of the hymns themselves. The mythological king lists found in the Puranas are solidified by epigraphy. Carved stone records like the Ashokan edicts physically confirm the borders and administrative reach of the Mauryan Empire, and the trade routes described in the Buddhist Jatakas are verified by numismatics. Early punch-marked silver coins physically demonstrate the shift toward an urban, mercantile economy in regions like Magadha. Ancient Indian history requires a rigorous process of triangulation. It is built by mapping a religious taxonomy, stripping away the myth, and locking the remaining data into place with foreign observation and the hard truth of the physical earth.